Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday. Welcome to day 6. It might not be morning by the time you see this because I'm going to publish it at 1 o'clock like I promised yesterday. Today's a fun day because we get to mix things up, literally. Right, Carol? Good one?
Good one.
Thanks. The kids aren't here to totally crack up at my jokes because they're still asleep. Okay.
I totally crack up at your jokes.
A couple things. We have a all the way mature starter. We don't need to feed it anymore, but we do. But it's ready to be separated for baking. Before we put it in the dough, we're gonna just do a flour and water mixture for autolyse. I looked up autolyse. I've been told to do it, but not really understood what it does. It just lets the flour and water rest, giving the dough special processing characteristics and improving the overall quality of the baked goods. Then there's a flow chart and a whole bunch of stuff that you can look up if you want. Autolyse, A-U-T-O-L-Y-S-E. Okay, so we're gonna do that for 20 to 60 minutes. We're going to let 800 grams of flour, excuse me, 800 grams of flour and 460 grams of water rest together for 20 to 60 minutes. Here we go. This is, I think I mentioned earlier in the week, I like to use bread flour. They didn't have any at the store. This is just general all-purpose white flour. I've been mixing in a little bit of home ground, what is it, Carol? What is the wheat we have? Just whole wheat?
Hard white wheat.
Hard white home ground wheat. I've been mixing in a couple 100 grams of that, which is fun, and it gives it a little bit of a heartier taste. But for this one, I'm gonna, along with you guys, just do regular old plain old white flour. That was a little bit too much. Okay. 800 grams of flour, 460 grams of warm water, $300, 400, last time I went over, 462, perfect. I like to use the KitchenAid with the dough hook with this thing, and I stir it with the dough hook for just a minute just to blend things together. But today I'm gonna do everything by hand. Just in case you don't have one of those. So this is just going to be a light mixing. We're not going crazy. And then we are going to cover it with a damp kitchen towel and come back in 30 minutes, 20 to 60 minutes. Okay? I don't usually go much further than that. Awesome. Okay. My damp kitchen towel. That's that for the first 30 minutes. Now, here's our starter on day 6. If the starter if it just looks like blended flour and water and it's not bubbly and stretchy, see the stretchiness? Then it probably hasn't fermented. You don't have to start from scratch, but it's probably not gonna work to bake with. So I would encourage you to keep following the separation steps you'll have to discard more than normal, but you're gonna wanna see activity like this and sort of that sour smelliness. It's possible, I don't know all the reasons why it wouldn't work. Maybe if it was in too cold of a place, that would slow things down. I said that Jake and I, the first time we did it, we didn't use fruit. Fruit did seem to help this time. So let me know in the comments if there's trouble. But where was I? Okay, so this is our 6-day-old starter. Here's what we're gonna do. And this is what you're gonna do from now on every time you bake. We are going to zero out the scale, set aside 200 grams. Did you have a question?
Nope.
Okay. Set aside 200 grams of starter. 150, 165. 95, 200, awesome. I think we've done this before. 200 grams and 200 grams of flour and 200 grams of water. That becomes our new starter base. And we do this, hang on, I can't talk and measure at the same time. 296. 365. 400. And then 200 more of water. So 200 starter, 200 flour, 200 water.
And this is for the starter that you're keeping,
This
not
is the
using
starter we're
today.
not using to bake. Yep, exactly right. 480, 502, 578. 600. The remaining should be what we want. The recipe calls for 320 grams of starter to go in your dough. This is 357, which is perfect. I wouldn't toss any because there's usually a little bit left over in the bowl anyway. Anywhere from 300 to 400 is fine, but 320 is what the ingredients are going to call for. Okay, so 600 minus 320 is what? 280,
Good job.
right? Math on video, not my favorite. So I always mix to 600 total. I always leave my full starter at 600. If it was perfect, it would be 5. Now I lost it again. We want 200 plus 320 is 520. If there wasn't any waste, we would just measure to 520, but that's a complicated blend of flour and water and starter. So I just do 200, 200, and 200 every time. And if there's a little bit left over, no big deal. Make sense? So this will be our 600 gram starter. It can be fed, if you're gonna leave it out, if you're gonna bake a lot, if you're gonna bake every day, it just stays at room temp and you feed it once a day. Obviously, if you're not baking, you don't want to feed it once. Well, if you feed it once a day, you'll have to throw a whole bunch away each time because we only want 200. Or if you continue to grow, like Mr. Bateman said, pretty soon it'll be 16 batches. It'll be way too much. It grows super fast. So if you're baking once a week, like I usually do, I feed it like this. I leave it out for overnight because it'll double in size and bubble, do all that crazy stuff. And then I seal the lid up and put it in the fridge for a week. It stays in the fridge until, or I take it out of the fridge, let it get to room temp, and then it's ready. Okay, so here's, I baked this morning with my regular starter. Here's what it looks like after being fed last night. Pretty similar, right? This is the starter that we've used since the summertime. Okay. Tangentially, here's what the bread looked like this morning. So good. So this is what you guys get to look forward to tomorrow. So here's what's gonna happen next. In 20 minutes, I'm gonna add on to the video and show you what to do next. So when you get this video, it's gonna be the whole day 6 process, but we're gonna snip some things together. I'm gonna do it in, since my time and your time are gonna be off, I'm just gonna say the hour marks starting from the beginning. Cool? Okay, see you in a minute. Okay, welcome back. It has been 45 minutes since we started this morning, so that's plenty of time for the autolyse. No changes here, obviously. It's just maybe a little bit more mixed looking, but I didn't stir it anymore. Now for the fun part, we get to mix in our 320 grams of starter. Woohoo! I think I said before, I do this in the KitchenAid with the dough hook, and it's way easier. It still takes a solid 20 minutes and it drives everybody crazy while it mixes. So I started mixing it in the closet, but it's gonna be a long process either way. I'm gonna do this one by hand, just for those of you who don't have a mixer. And it is gonna be super, super sticky. I'm gonna switch from the spoon to my freshly washed hands. And you just have to incorporate it all together. It's really slimy and goopy. And you just mix and mix and mix. Pretty soon, well, not super soon, but you are going to be tempted to add flour, and you don't have to. You just have to mix. Pretty soon it will not stick to the sides, and then we'll lightly flour the counter and start actually kneading it. But for now, it's just a lot of pinching and incorporating.
Toby, does this bread not have any salt in it?
Yeah, great question. It has, it does, and we add that in a little while. We just want the starter. Salt can be tough on starter, so I add that once it's a little more mixed together and not right away. I add, the recipe calls for 15 grams of salt. I add 18 grams of, what kind of salt is it, Jake? Coarse kosher salt, which isn't as salty as kitchen salt or whatever the other salt is called.
Keep mixing.
Sorry. So 15 to 18 grams of salt. The recipe doesn't call for sugar, but I put in like 12 to 15 grams of sugar just for fun. It probably does, it's probably not enough to make a difference, but it makes me feel like it's a little bit sweeter. So I'm gonna add those in maybe 5 minutes. Okay. Now we're gonna pause while I keep mixing, and we'll be back in 10 minutes to show you what it looks like. Bye. Okay, it's been 5 minutes. It's starting to look a lot less soupy and more like dough. I'm just continuing to mix by pinching and reaching and stretching. Still super sticky, and like I said, you would be tempted to add flour, but you don't want to. It'll get better. Carol measured salt and sugar for me. 18 grams of coarse kosher salt and 12 to 15 grams of sugar. I just sprinkle it in maybe a third at a time, so it doesn't just stay in one spot. Keep mixing it all together. And then I'm gonna do another I'm gonna do another 5 minutes of this, and then I'm gonna transfer to the table. Okay, see you in 5 minutes. Okay, we're back. I've been hand mixing in the bowl for, I don't know, 7 to 10 minutes total. Halfway through I added the salt and sugar, and it's to a consistency now that we can switch to the countertop. It's still gonna be a lot of mixing, so like I said, KitchenAid if you've got one, for sure. I think we did this the first time and not since. These little bench scraper things are handy if you've got one. They're flexible and they help scoop it right out of the bowl. And then we are just going to knead the dough for another 10 or 15 minutes. Okay? The bench scraper is handy on the countertop too because it's still sticky, but this is just regular old kneading, folding and pushing. I might have put a twinge too much flour down, to be honest, but just because we don't want it to be too floury. I just push in and fold like that, and then every so often there's a lift and slap that I can't remember exactly the process. I think this helps form the gluten. Is that what it does, Jake?
Sounds about right.
What does lift and slap do? We've seen it on a couple videos, and it's fairly satisfying. What we're going for with all of the kneading is what they call the windowpane test. And this is actually going a little faster than I expected. But you know you're done when you can take a section and stretch it out and have it be like a window pane and instead of tearing. So it's a little bit transparent, okay? And there's lots of little clumps in here still, so you want the dough to turn pretty smooth and then pass the window pane test. So I knead for maybe 60 seconds. Then I'll do the lift and slap. And then back to kneading for 60 seconds. And we'll be back in 10 minutes or so. Good exercise for Saturday morning. Be back. Welcome back. It's been a half an hour since our kneaded bread. Yep. Ned bread. Since our kneaded bread passed the window pane test close enough. We covered it with a damp kitchen towel and it's resting, okay? It looks pretty much the same, but this is the routine for the next minimum 3 hours, ideally 6 hours. Okay, we're gonna do this lift and fold routine at least once an hour, but once every 30 minutes is better. Okay, totally fine once an hour. I think I said earlier, I usually start this Friday night at about 5 is when I start from the very beginning. And so I will have done a lift and fold at least 3 or 4 times before bed, and that's always fine, okay? So you take your dough and we want to stretch it but not tear it, okay? So just kind of get your fingers in along the edge like that. Can you see that, buddy? Mm-hmm. And we scoop down and lift and fold it over. This is really good dough. This is mixed more than I usually mix it. Okay, turn it 90 degrees. Turn the bowl 90 degrees and do the same thing from that corner. Tuck under, lift, and fold. Okay, another 90 degrees until you've gone to all 4 sides. Lift and fold. And last one. This is gluten stretch. It's promoting gluten development. Okay, there we go. Cover it back up and you're gonna do this same thing. I'm not gonna show it again, but you're gonna do that exact same thing at least once an hour. Twice an hour is better, for at least 3 hours. And then we're gonna form the dough. See you later. So I'm gonna package everything you saw this morning into one video right now. And then so you can get started, I'll post another video a little later to show how you form the dough. And then the process is form it, refrigerate it, and then all you have to do in the morning after everything's preheated is bake it. So you're gonna lift and stretch, you're gonna lift and fold for 3 to 5 hours, and then stay tuned for another separate video about forming the dough. See you later.